Edmund Kemper, a towering figure both physically and intellectually, left a trail of brutality that shocked the world. His charming facade masked a twisted mind, capable of unspeakable violence. With a photographic memory, a genius-level IQ, and a knack for blending into society, Kemper evaded capture while committing some of the most gruesome murders in American history. But what drove this quiet and articulate man to kill? Let's explore the case of Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. Kemper's early life was marked by emotional abuse and a troubled family dynamic. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was raised primarily by his mother in Helena, Montana. His mother was reportedly a neurotic, domineering alcoholic who was emotionally abusive and critical of Kemper, particularly belittling him for his large size. Weighing 13 pounds at birth, by 4 Kemper was a head taller than other children his age, and he would grow to be 6 feet 9 inches tall and 300 pounds. His mother referred to him as a real weirdo and frequently belittled and humiliated him. She often forced him to sleep in a locked basement, out of fear that he would harm his sisters. From an early age, Kemper exhibited signs of deep psychological disturbance. By the age of 10, he was already fantasizing about murder and death. He displayed cruelty to animals and showed signs of developing a fascination with violence, often engaging in strange and disturbing behavior, such as decapitating his sister's dolls. At the age of 13, he killed the family cat. He kept parts of it in his closet until his mother found it. He would also sneak out and go to a female teacher's house, where he would watch her through the windows. This disturbing behavior was a foreshadowing of what was to come. In 1964, at the age of only 15, Kemper committed his first murders, killing his grandparents in cold blood. Following an argument with his grandmother, Kemper fetched the hunting rifle his grandfather had given him and fatally shot his grandmother in the head. He then waited for his grandfather to return home and killed him in the driveway. After the murders, Kemper calmly called the police, reported the murders, and then waited to be arrested. Declared legally insane, Kemper was sent to the Atascadero State Hospital, a maximum security facility for the criminally insane. While there, he underwent extensive psychological testing, revealing an exceptionally high IQ of 145, but also a deeply disturbed psyche. Despite this, he was able to manipulate the hospital staff into believing he was rehabilitated. After serving just 5 years, he was released on December 18, 1969, his 21st birthday. Kemper was extremely manipulative and managed to convince his probation psychiatrist that he was completely rehabilitated. In his final report, the psychologist described Kemper as a very well-adjusted young man. Following the psychologist's recommendations, Kemper's juvenile records were permanently expunged on November 29, 1972. However, far from being rehabilitated or well-adjusted, Kemper had begun a murder spree even before his juvenile records were expunged. Between May 1972 and April 1973, Kemper murdered 8 women, most of whom were young female students. This earned him the nickname the co-ed killer. Kemper's modus operandi was chillingly methodical. He would pick up female hitchhikers, often posing as a friendly and non-threatening figure, before driving them to remote areas where he would murder them by shooting, stabbing, or strangling. After the killings, Kemper would engage in acts of necrophilia and dismemberment. His horrific crimes were further compounded by his desire to keep souvenirs from his victims, such as body parts. What made Kemper particularly terrifying was his ability to blend into society, despite his brutal tendencies. He was known to frequent bars where law enforcement officers gathered, engaging in casual conversations about the ongoing investigation into the serial killings. His intelligence and outward composure allowed him to evade suspicion, all while continuing his reign of terror. On May 7, 1972, Kemper picked up 2 hitchhiking students from Fresno State University, Mary Ann Pesce and Anita Mary Lucchesa. He promised to take them to Stanford University. Instead, he took them to a secluded wooded area, where he stabbed and strangled them both to death. He put their bodies in the trunk of his car and drove home. On the way, he was stopped by a police officer for having a broken taillight. However, his ability to stay composed meant the officer was not alerted to the murders and Kemper was allowed to go. Once in his apartment, Kemper photographed and performed necrophilia with the naked corpses before dismembering them. He decapitated both women and disposed of the severed heads in a ravine. Kemper struck again on September 14, 1972. 15-year-old Aiko Ku had missed the bus to her dance class and fatefully decided to hitchhike. She was picked up by Kemper, who took her to a remote area where he raped and killed her. With her body in the trunk of his car, Kemper stopped at a bar and had a few drinks before going home. Once in his apartment, Kemper performed necrophilia on Aiko's corpse before dismembering and disposing of the body. By January 1973, Kemper had left his apartment and moved back in with his mother. On January 7, he drove around Cabrillo College campus and picked up 18-year-old student Cynthia Ann Shaw. Kemper took Shaw to a wooded area where he shot her with a .22 caliber pistol. He then took her body back to his mother's house and hid it in a closet overnight. The next morning, after his mother had left for work, he performed necrophilia on Shaw's corpse. He then dismembered and decapitated her in his mother's bathtub. He kept her severed head for several days, before eventually burying it in his mother's garden. The rest of her remains were thrown off a cliff. Over the course of a few weeks, the remains were discovered and pieced together. On February 5, 1973, Kemper had yet another heated argument with his mother. He left the house determined to take his violent rage out on an innocent victim. He first picked up 23-year-old Rosalind Heather Thorpe, and while she was in the car, he also picked up 20-year-old Alice Helen Liu. Kemper shot both women dead with the .22 caliber pistol. He took the bodies to his mother's house. He beheaded the women in his car and carried the headless corpses into his mother's house. He then engaged in necrophilia with the headless bodies. He disposed of their dismembered bodies in Eden Canyon the next morning. Kemper's female victims were proxies for the hatred and rage he harbored against his mother. On April 20, 1973, Kemper's homicidal rage reached its climax when he murdered his mother, the person he had long held responsible for much of his psychological torment. He waited for his mother to fall asleep before sneaking into her room and bludgeoning her to death with a claw hammer. He then decapitated her, put her head on a shelf, and shouted at it for an hour. Kemper hid his mother's body and then went to a bar for a drink. When he returned home, he invited his mother's best friend, Sarah Taylor Hallett, to the house. When Hallett arrived, Kemper strangled her to death. He hid her body in a closet and left a note for the police. He then fled the scene and drove over 1,000 miles to Pueblo, Colorado. After arriving in Pueblo, he found a phone booth. He called the police and confessed to the murders of his mother and Hallett. He then waited for the police to arrive and take him into custody. After his arrest, he confessed to the murders of the other 6 young women. During his trial, Kemper's confessions and cooperation with authorities left little doubt about his guilt. In November 1973, he was found guilty of 8 counts of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Kemper's demeanor during his trial and subsequent incarceration only added to his complex and chilling persona. He became known for his willingness to talk about his crimes, often providing detailed interviews in which he described his murders with unnerving calmness. Kemper was clearly a deeply disturbed individual, whose ability to manipulate those around him made him particularly dangerous. Kemper has been denied parole on several occasions. In April 2024, a psychiatric evaluation classified him as at a high risk to re-offend if released. Today, at 76, he remains incarcerated at California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Ed Kemper's story is a sobering reminder of the complexities of criminal behavior and the often hidden traumas that can fuel such darkness. While his intelligence and charisma allowed him to hide in plain sight, his actions expose the horrific depths of his psychological torment. He serves as an example of a serial killer whose facade of normalcy masked a monstrous reality.